So lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we have to start at the best Christmas card ever. Now, this is a meme. This is a meme, and this guy, Kirk, is he a news guy? I don't know if he's a news guy. He advises people, so he's just a regular guy. He says, Alberta NDP Janice Irwin's holiday card is out, and it's all you could expect it to be. The only change made was the Palestinian headband on the cat. Everything else is real. And I reshared this saying, please let this be real. Please let this be real. And I didn't actually see the headband when I shared that. I just saw the cat, and I just saw everything else. And I thought, I love the plaid on the other pattern. It's fantastic. Everything about this Christmas card is fantastic. And it is, I thought, man, it's real. It's real. Nope. Here's Janice Irwin's Twitter account. X account, whatever you want to call it. And the cat doesn't have a headband, right? So somebody meme magic that. But the rest, absolutely 100% real. Everything. I mean, it's fantastic, isn't it? So, Merry Christmas, everybody. The best Christmas card thus far this season, I would have to say. So this is my reminder. Somebody sent her a picture of their cat looking at her Christmas card with the cat. So, the holiday season, if you're looking for a gift, the number one selling gift this holiday season is, according to CTV at Costco, is Costco's $2,000 gold bars. Because in a societal collapse, nothing retains its value like gold. Right? I mean, let's talk about your health. No, I'm not X22. Let's talk about the WEF, though. Herb says, it's obvious what they're doing right now. The people were beginning to come together, and now they're doing everything they can to tear them apart. The second you and others begin standing up for yourselves, united in larger groups, they ended their protocol and have been entirely focused on dividing you since. And it's working well. So there's divisions between people who support Palestinians, Hamas, and people who support Israel, the Jews, right? That's one wedge being driven currently. Another wedge being driven is anybody who is for the Hindu statue. That's one group of people. And against the Hindu statue, that's another group of people. And there's rationalizations on both sides, but that's a wedge being driven. These are racist wedges meant to divide. And then when you look into it, right, we had a school on the 20th of September of this year. So not very long ago, in the grand scheme of things, we had Jews and Arabs and Christians all coming together to oppose Jews and Muslims and Christians, to just stay in the same vernacular, all coming together to oppose the radicalized ideology of gender ideology in schools. Everybody came together. They said, we believe in different things with regards to religion, but together we believe that we should teach our children sane things, and this gender ideology is not sane. And so they all came together and coalesced together. Everybody came together, and there was a big protest. It was widely billed as big deal. And then boom, all of a sudden, wedge, right? And then if we weren't wedged enough, Hindu statue wedge, right? So these are tools being utilized against us. And I mean, I'm saying that questioningly, but I don't think there's any question. It's working a treat, because people, like, I see Kian and Darshan Maharaja arguing, and these two would usually ideologically be on similar sides, although I think people are calling Kian out for taking funding from the CPC, and people are calling other people out for being journalists or working at different places, Epic Times or wherever you work. Who cares? Like, really, I think it's high school stuff. It doesn't matter. But usually those people would be arguing on the side of freedom, or lean more towards Freedom Convoy, and instead they're arguing over a Hindu statue and what that means about Kian, or what that means about the other guy. Or instead they're arguing, they canceled a march after the October 7th event because division achieved, right? And so that's the point. And it's working really well. And how well is it working? Well, here's what Joe Biden's doing. And Wokeness says the Biden administration is removing the Reconciliation Monument in Arlington. The monument was built 109 years ago to honor post-Civil War reconciliation and national unity. History is being rewritten before our eyes. So I've been talking about the four olds, and somebody was saying, no, it's against a specific religion. If it was against the four olds, the Hindu thing wouldn't be allowed. I think the Hindu thing is being allowed because it drives division, and you have to have the instability to topple the current regime, the current group of people who are in charge. Well, the current group of people who think they're in charge through voting and so on and so forth. In order to drive massive change, you have to destabilize. And how do you do that? You wedge, and they are doing that very, very actively, very actively. It's unbelievable. We're going to go into the Israel and Palestine stuff. So first, we're going to talk about Israel because Melanie Joly is being quoted by CTV News. This is not a joke or a parody. I wish it was, but it's not. This is the quote that they're going with. CTV News says, feasibility of the two-state solution has increased since Israel-Hamas war started, says Melanie Joly. Oh, has it? Yeah, I mean, no, relations there are looking great. Two-state solution for sure. The Gaza Strip is, I mean, I watched them reduce an entire neighborhood to rubble this morning, right? On Twitter, there was a video of them blowing up. Now, who knows if that's real or not, right? But, you know, Gaza can have the rubble and Israel can put their port in and two-state solution achieved. What is she even talking about? It seems that our foreign affairs minister is completely out of touch with reality, and CTV News is just quoting her for that, right? Unbelievable. Here's the report. It says, this is what Melanie Joly says, quote, I think because the conflict is so difficult for Israel, so difficult for the Palestinians, so difficult for the world, not only in Canada because we've seen the rise of anti-Semitism. Ooh, we're going to watch something about that in a minute. The rise of Islamophobia and the rise of tension, she said. But that's the case here, that's the case in Europe, and that's the case south of the border, and the case in Arab countries, she said. So more than ever, many countries are preoccupied by the state of the region. Joly said she believes that was not as much the case before October 7th attacks, which have renewed a global focus on the Middle East, prompting her to have many conversations on the topic with her counterparts in the region, because it is also in the interest of the world to see a two-state solution happening. So her hypothesis that she's sharing, and maybe the quote is ham-fisted, but the hypothesis she's sharing basically is before October 7th, nobody was talking about this to, solidify a two-state solution. And since the horrific actions of October 7th, now people are talking about it. So the two-state solution is in view. And I think that's garbage. Utter nonsense. I think that they're trying to put the genie back in the bottle, and they can't. They can't do that. Here's what's going on in Toronto. Never Again, something podcast says, Hamas supporters threatened to kill shoppers at the Toronto Eaton Centre right in front of the Toronto police, and no one is arrested. So this is what's going on in Canada. Not great. Rule of law country. If these guys were truckers, brandishing Canadian flags, would they be allowed to continue to walk like these guys have been? Here we go.
Do you believe Palestinians deserve freedom? I'm telling you, because if he touches me, I'm putting him on the floor. You come near me, I'll put you lay down on the floor. I'll lay you to sleep. I'll put you 6 feet deep. I'll put you 6 feet deep.
So that was a police officer he was talking to. He said, if you come up to me, well, Andy Brooke is a former police officer, retired, and he says, at 7 seconds, I'll tell you if you touch unintelligible, you come near now, lay you down on the floor, I'll lay you to sleep, I'll put you 6 feet deep, I'll put you 6 feet deep. And then he says it again, and Andy Brooks says, as a former RCMP officer, retired, while many others are commenting on this video, I will say this person should have been immediately arrested for uttering threats contrary to the Criminal Code of Canada. And he cites Criminal Code 264.1.1. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong, right? And a whole bunch of people are weighing in on this. Kevin Vaughn, he's an MP, and I use his stuff a lot. He says, everyone must be equal before the law. Uttering threats per section 264 in the Criminal Code of Canada is a criminal offense. Our laws must be upheld or they're not worth the paper they're written on. Canada must be a country governed by the rule of law, not mob rule. Well, seems like it's mob rule. Melissa Lanceman weighs in on this. She says, this cannot become commonplace in Canada. They broke the law with complete impunity. It's no longer a peaceful protest. Yeah, when you're threatening to put police officers 6 feet deep, that's crossing some lines or two. right? Eli says this is unacceptable and barbaric behavior that has no place in Canada. It's time for law enforcement to put an end to these disruptive hate fests. I don't know that we need to go that far. I don't know that I need rules around who can protest when, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We need to, when people behave in aggressive, violent ways, stop them because they're breaking the law. I think we have laws on the books already that would prevent a lot of this, but it's not being enforced properly because, I mean, there was a huge mob there and there wasn't a huge police presence. But it's interesting that when there's, truckers around, you can get a massive police response. But, pro-Palestinian, nothing, nobody there. Pretty wild, right? I think there was 2 officers, maybe 3. That's all I saw. Jennifer says, I stayed out of the Freedom Convoy debate, but one of the main arguments about the mall closing in Ottawa is that people were afraid, scared. How are people okay with what's happening now with protesters in malls scaring children who are visiting Santa and threatening others? Right. I mean, it's pretty intimidating to be part of, an innocent bystander when a group like this takes over a store or whatever. If you've got a child in there or something to that effect, it's not great. And the world has gone mad, says Canada welcomed 431,645 immigrants in 2022, with 35% settling in Toronto. Now we have massive anti-Semitic protests at Toronto's Eaton Centre, disrupting Christmas shopping. Tell me these things are not connected. This is Trudeau's Canada. And the whole idea of, I don't think necessarily that these 400 and whatever immigrants are massively represented necessarily in this crowd. There are perhaps some of them, and perhaps some of them are radicalized people who organized it or whatever. But this really stinks to me of the next thing that we're doing. Like, it was the Black Lives Matter protest and the Pride celebration that was kind of militant, right? It was they weren't burning down post offices or whatever, but they were marching and, we're going to march because we're LGBT and, you can't stop us police officers and please don't come to our march because you're police officers and you represent the man or whatever. This seems like the next one of those things. It seems artificial, manufactured. And so, this is another way to divide people. It's another wedge. It's to say, oh, well, obviously those immigrants, those refugees, they're to blame. That's the matador. Herding the bull, herding's the wrong word, whatever, enticing the bull that way, right? That's the matador controlling the bull. And I don't think that that's true. I think it's much more likely that these people were hired off Kijiji or whatever and brought in. And yes, I'm not saying that all of them, because I'm sure that there are ideological people who are definitely in line with this, who will definitely go along with it. And that happens on everything. COVID too. There were doctors, there were doctors who were like, Camels are my favorite smoke, right? Doctors who are like, I'm on number 9, please give me the next injection. So there's a long history of doctors lying about the health issues, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm not saying that there aren't opportunistic, useful idiots and people who just go along with it. Sure, absolutely, 100%. And maybe those people are represented by this, but falling into the blaming this group of people, they didn't do this. There's much a victim here in Canada as we are, because things aren't easy here now, right? And so I think the government has done a lot of this, and I think the government is funding a lot of this through NGOs and other things like that. And I think it's not great. This is incredible. I've only listened to the 7 minutes so far, but we're going to listen to the first 2 minutes. She's talking about Hitler's expansion through Europe and what happened. And Freya's sharing this, and she says, this is from May 2013. Quote, is America today, back then, marching to the same drumbeat as Nazi Germany? This is Kitty Worthman. This is well worth 33 minutes, I promise you. The similarities are astonishing. The whole first third of Mein Kampf is explaining how the USSR was destroyed, how Germany was destroyed and undermined through the loss of the First World War, and then the Treaty of Versailles after that, the reparations they had to pay, and the Weimar, I'm saying it wrong, how all of that happened, right? And how basically why people wanted Hitler to come in and fix the problems, because his solutions seem to work in the face of exactly what's happening today. Exactly the same, similar economic headwinds, et cetera, that are all policy driven. right? And it seems like the same plan is being replayed out. So we'll listen to, like, I was 7 minutes in and I could have watched the whole thing, and I could probably do like an in-depth like breakdown of this video. It's very interesting. Here we go.
Thank you for inviting me here to your beautiful state of California. The media still claims that Hitler rolled into Austria with tanks and guns and took us over. Not true at all. The fact is that the Austrian people elected Hitler by 98% of the vote by means of the ballot box. Now, how could that happen in a Christian nation, almost 100% Catholic, that they would elect a monster like Hitler? Hitler did not look like a monster. He did not act like a monster. He talked like an American politician. The year was 1938. Austria was in a very, very deep depression. We had more than 30% unemployment. We had 25% inflation. And if you borrowed money from the bank, you paid 25% interest. That's why farmers were going broke, businesses were going broke, they could not pay their mortgage, or they could not pay their taxes. What was even worse, we had riots in our cities. We had whole blocks of the cities burned down, and our law enforcement was almost helpless. They could not control the riots. The unions were calling for strikes, and industry would close, and factories would close up, hence all this unemployment. It was not unusual in my home that 30 people a day would knock on the door for a bowl of soup and a slice of bread. They could keep themselves alive by going door to door. There were no jobs. They were young people, college graduates, no jobs. The media told us that in Germany, where Hitler ruled since 1933, they had full employment, they had a high living standard, and everybody was driving the little beetle car, the Volkswagen. We did not hear a whisper that anybody was being persecuted or arrested. We only heard good things. And of course, we spoke the same language. We spoke German. We had the same culture. There was only a border between us, Austria and Germany, like South and North Dakota. And we said, why not? We would like to have the same high living standard what Germany had, and of all the things, jobs. People wanted to work. Austrian people are not lazy, they want to work. So the Austrian people petitioned the government for a plebiscite, for an election. And hence, the Austrian people elected Hitler by 98% of the vote. So we got a new government, National Socialism. I translate for you, Nationalsozialismus, from the word national, the word Nazi derived. So we were getting a Nazi government. Nobody was elected anymore from the school board, the city commission, the county commission, legislature, and governors. They were all appointed. Well, we thought they would only pick the very best people to govern us. Just like in Germany, we trusted them. We did not ask questions. So the first thing what happened, we had to carry national ID cards. You could not board a bus, you could not board a train without showing your national ID card. Don't ever let that happen here. Very bad idea. The next thing what happened, Hitler gave us free radios. So we could listen to him. He was a great orator. And then he nationalized the radio station. And we were warned if we would turn on a foreign radio station like British Broadcasting or Switzerland, death penalty. Nobody turned on a foreign radio station because you know what the death penalty meant.
Right? So, I mean, it's compelling. We're at 5:45, so we listened to that for a little longer than I intended. But I mean, I think it's worth the investment. The link will be in the description. It is Freya who's got the video here. So super interesting stuff. But do you hear the similarities between what's going on with now with our economy, with the jobs, with the inflationary rate, with all of the rest of it? It's policy driven, just as then. Then it was a plan to bankrupt farmers and then take the land, right? Bankrupt people, drive them into cities, take the land. Same thing that they did in the USSR. And so it's a very interesting history when you look at the history of it. And when you go back and actually read the history, because I've read Patton's book, I've read Winston Churchill's book. Winston Churchill's book starts in 1930 to set the stage of the whole thing. And very interesting things are contained in both. And I've read Hitler's book too, because, you know, it's all the same thing. And it's very interesting. It's very interesting. It's like reading Ender's Game and then the Bean version of Ender's Game. I've read both of those as well. So, but people who don't understand history will be forced to repeat it. And we are going through a repeat of history currently. I said we'd be coming back to that anti-Semitic term. Here's the Mockingbird media. Why would they be doing this? Why do you think that they're doing this? This is happening across the West. Everybody's talking about anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. Here we go.
Anti-Semitism is on the rise. Anti-Semitism is on the rise.
The rise in anti-Semitism in Australia. The rise in anti-Semitism in Australia.
Anti-Semitism is on the rise. Anti-Semitism is on the rise.
The rise in anti-Semitism. The rise in anti-Semitism.
The rising levels of anti-Semitism. The rising of anti-Semitism.
A rise in anti-Semitic behaviour. A rise in anti-Semitic behaviour.
Anti-Semitism in Australia.
Right, so it's hard to get away from. Oh goodness, it's hard to get away from this labeling, this word even. Right, everything is anti-Semitic. If anything happens, it's anti-Semitic, and people are. I constantly ask, why is one type of racism worse than another type of racism? Like, why does one get everyone's outrage and another type is completely and utterly ignored? You know what I'm saying? And it's very frustrating to have people in charge tweet out, you know, Slava Ukraine, and we have to stand with Israel. But when people are being taught to hate by skin color in the Upper Grand District School Board, they don't respond to that tweet. And that's weird to me because I feel like they should be. You know what I'm saying? Okay, let's move on a little bit to immigration. Anne says, our government sat back while we waited for action. A Molotov cocktail at a synagogue, Jewish schools targeted, another church burned, children meeting Santa harassed, streets and businesses targeted, MPs targeted. It will boil over. This isn't Canada. This is UK, right? So, oh wait, this is Canada here, but she's citing Rishi Sunak, and Sunak says migrants are a weapon to destabilize and overwhelm our country and will destroy our faith in government. This is doubling or tripling down on the idea that the people that the government has said diversity is our strength, we have to welcome all these people and so on and so forth. We're now supposed to blame them for this kind of outpouring of all of the crap we're seeing, like the mall protests, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're supposed to blame them. And again, it feels like the matador manipulating the bull. I'll just play Rishi Sunak's thing. It's 43 seconds. But again, he's talking about how this is used to destabilize. If it's used to destabilize, why did our governments do it? Because they wanted to destabilize our country. Here we go.
And our enemies will also see that we are unable to deal with this, and then they will so increasingly use migration as a weapon, deliberately driving people to our shores to try to destabilize our societies. So if we do not tackle this problem, the numbers will only grow. It will overwhelm our countries and our capacity to help those who actually need our help the most. The cost of accommodating these people will anger our citizens, who won't understand why their money should have to be spent on dealing with the consequences of this evil trade. It will destroy the public's faith, not just in us as politicians, but in our very systems of government. And
Right. So, I mean, there's a lot to be said, and it seems like the governments in the West are not even waking up to it. They're just saying what the citizens want to hear. I don't think anybody's actually going to do anything about it. Rishi Sunak came to power promising to stop the boats, and he hasn't. So that's notable too. The Great Alberta Radio Show is responding to Mark Miller. Mark Miller says that Canada continues to step up and take action. This includes $21 million to support vulnerable Afghans and a commitment to make the Economic Mobility Pathways pilot a permanent program. So a more permanent pathway to citizenship in Canada. And the Great Alberta Radio Show says another $21 million to another country. Canadians say no to this. Mark Miller and his liberal fascists are destroying our country and handing every cent to other countries while our people live on the streets. Yeah, there's a lot of problems in Canada, and they're not being solved by sending millions of dollars to foreign countries. And it's very, very upsetting to see our tax dollars lit on fire, right? What are we doing? People who come here, there's not enough housing, food's expensive. We're selling them a dream. We're selling them something that doesn't exist. And they get here and the reality of it is very different, right? It's very different than what we're saying abroad. Jacques says, hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.